Hi. Welcome to 22 Sides. I'm Alexis. I'm here with Robin and
Jon Rosenthal.
What does Jon Rosenthal do?
So I am the Texas State Representative for House District 135. I'm also an underemployed mechanical engineer.
And how long have you been sitting in your seat that you currently have?
So
in the legislature, right?
In the legislature, yeah.
Just thought I'd ask. I was going to say,
not today.
Not 4 or 5 minutes.
He's like, I mean, it's not even warm yet.
So I was first elected in 2018 and sworn in 2019. So I'm in my fourth term. I guess that's 7. I'm coming up on 7 years.
That's a big deal.
It is. It's a big deal. Although I started when I was over 50 and I'm just about to turn 62. So, in the
okay, we aren't going to get into age. Says the oldest person here.
I'm not asking you your age. But some people
How old's old, Alexis?
I think it would be around 76.
Okay, good. So I'm 42. We have a lot of round numbers here, But Jon, I remember when you were just first running. I mean, do you recognize that guy anymore, or have you been polished, molded, changed in any good way?
So remember the first time that we recorded together.
This isn't even our first podcast together.
Yeah, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
So I should say I still identify in my head as an oil field engineer.
Wow.
But I have to admit that I have become more acclimated to politics. I certainly understand a lot more than I did. I've now, been through 4 successful campaigns for re-election.
Well, and you've been through a redistricting.
And a redistricting.
My view is you learn a lot during a redistricting.
Mm-hmm.
You may not like it.
And you've been through a few prides. That's where I first met you. Was that your first pride parade?
And this last pride parade, I was the Allied Grand Marshal.
Woo-hoo!
So that was
I was going to bring that up because
huge honor.
I looked at the post online. It looked like you all had a great time. I wish I'd been able to join you. But my body says we aren't going out in that heat.
Ugh, the heat is rough.
It's hot, and then you generally have to do a lot of walking, and walking plus heat can be a whole thing.
Exactly.
I get it.
Yep, but it looked like you had a great time.
We did.
Were there a lot of people there?
There were a lot of people there. So
that's what it looked like.
We were worried that the turnout would be dampened because Beyonce Cowboy Carter
That's
tour,
a big deal. Yeah.
having their first night coinciding with Houston Pride Parade.
Right.
Yeah, people were like, hands down, Bay wins.
So, and some of the people that I invited actually told me, I'd like to come, but I have Cowboy Carter tickets.
Yeah, they planned differently.
Yeah, if I wasn't going to be in a once-in-a-lifetime role in this parade already, I might be going to Cowboy.
And I look at it this way. You're going to lose that argument.
So I didn't try to convince anybody not to go, but still the streets were lined. And
that's good. I was worried there wouldn't be that much attendance because of a lot of stuff.
There's a lot of stuff. But also, remember, was it last year or the first year that they had 2 separate Pride parades?
That they tried
last year.
They tried to, right? And then they recombined them this year. So I think people were relieved to just have one place to all unify around.
And I think last year they had a heat advisory where we were actually being told to stay inside. So, I mean, it was really hard to hear from the mayor to stay inside and then turn around and see people in the parade or at the parade because the show must go on. But how do you make these choices,
Right.
So
it's easy. It's Houston. You just do whatever.
Yeah.
Heat's not a big deal.
Yeah.
And they have plenty of ambulances to take you to the hospital and rehydrate
They do.
you.
Like we actually walked by all the first responders and the pile, a whole row of ambulances and EMS trucks and stuff just in case, I'm sure.
I mean, it's pretty unique to not have heat stroke from Houston Pride. So I know too many people who have had medical emergencies just having to be there to do their job, unfortunately. So I'm glad that you were able to be Ally Grand Marshal. Did you see any fun rewards from that? Or, I mean, it's one thing to be in the parade, but being a Grand Marshal, were you highlighted any different way that you appreciated?
So actually, to me, the honor especially for being an ally, right? So you're talking to someone who's not LGBTQ myself. And so the importance right now of having strong allies, with all the political attacks and the spread of misinformation and ignorance and fear breeds hate.
Oh, that stuff.
And so all that stuff comes at you. It seems like more intensely and more frequently than it has in past. And so I felt like the role was hugely important. I was named. I learned that I was selected as the Ally Grand Marshal while I was working in the legislature, sitting on the floor of the Texas House. There's a picture of me being all excited about that.
And did you announce that to the House members?
I told everybody around me.
Oh, okay.
I didn't make an announcement on the microphone.
I just thought I'd ask.
That's a good question.
Jolanda probably would have.
Are you a part of the representatives that are in an LGBT supportive chapter? I don't know the official name for.
So the Texas House LGBT Caucus.
Are you a part of that?
I'm a founding member.
Okay, that's what I thought I remembered.
So when the caucus formed, I'm not one of the originators, but I joined right away.
You got there as quick as you could.
I did. So that part, all in a way of saying, I feel like being named ally makes it even more important that I do as much ally stuff as I can. And while I already felt like that was important, now So when we have these bills come up on the House floor, and I'm like, well, Ally Grand Marshal of the Parade should certainly get up and say something about this. I might have spoken a little.
You better parade your way there to the mic, buddy. Like, we're not letting you go now.
Oh no, I spoke, and I would always.
Yeah, and it's. I was trying to think of something witty and intelligent to say about that, except it's sort of like you've been an ally ever since I've known you, which has been quite a while, especially with politics.
It's true.
I mean,
well, that's a good thing to say. It's like, when did you become an ally? Like, I mean, sometimes for people, it's like, I've just been this way. There was no, I discovered I should be a more inclusive person, and that spoke to me. Like, or I decided to get these votes or something.
Yeah,
like, I
tend to worry about the people that discovered that they needed to be inclusive.
Yeah.
So if you will recall, I had started going to the Houston GLBT caucus meetings as a political activist. So I wasn't.
And I think you had a little something to do with one of the Indivisible chapters.
I was, that's right. So I had started an Indivisible chapter.
Wow.
That's when I became aware of the political caucus.
Wow. I don't know if I remember this history. If I knew it, that's still
and
strong.
So this is all 2017 before I decided to run for office, and I was regularly attending those meetings at the Montrose Center, I think is where it used to always be.
When did you catch the bug to run yourself, though?
It's
a contagious bug.
So it was actually in the space where we're sitting right now.
I was going to say.
This is not scripted.
It really isn't.
But and it's also not filmed, but both of you just started blushing.
We know where it's going. I think Marika and I may have encouraged you.
That's right. So we were here at
Marika's so cool.
What did we call ourselves? Activist Leaders Meeting, which was basically a wine and cheese sort of thing that would be here.
Which started when Robin brought 12 random people over here, dropped them off at my house, and left.
I didn't know you were one of those people. So I got a call from an activist after the Pantsuit Nation was sort of splintering after Clinton didn't win. And she's like, what do I do now? I have about 15 to 20 people that want to still keep going, and I don't have any meeting space. And I said, oh, well, when are they meeting? She said, well, they're all used to meet on Tuesday night, so they can meet on Tuesday night. And I said, well, here's the address. And I gave her Alexis's address.
Hadn't talked to me.
And then I called Alexis and I said, I mean, if this actually happens, you could have 15 to 20 plus people coming to your house on Tuesday night. She says, well, I guess I'll get the grapes and the brownies and the cheese and the wine, and we show up here, and a few of the people were here. I didn't see half of them. Marika, I know, was a part of the group. maybe even that first night, but only two people had gotten here, and they said, "Wait, you're not staying?" I had to go teach. I'm like, I didn't even know,
and I was like, I don't even know what this group is.
But then it kept going, and it was people at the table, it was people who called in, it was people who zoomed in, and that's way cool that you're a part of that. I didn't know that.
So I was, and we were sitting here.
Yes.
Having wine and cheese. And,
yes, good munchies, very Southern.
Yes, exactly. And Marika said, your guy doesn't have any opposition. You would be really good. You should consider running for office.
Wow.
And I was like,
she's really smart.
Yeah, no, hell no.
That gives me goosebumps.
And I'm like, no, you really ought to think about it.
Oh,
Marika and I talked before that, by the way.
Did you really? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Marika's like, I'm thinking it would be really good if Jon ran.
I don't know if you know this, but I came out as a politician at a meeting of the GLBT caucus.
Wow.
So I just got up in front of the crowd and said, I'm going to run for office against this horrible person because they're terrible and we need change.
Wow. Well, if there's a group who understands about coming out, it's either it's for political causes, so that's really great. I didn't know that.
So I guess the, fairness to say so. I've known Jon and supported him for a very long time.
So it all started with your table munchies. That's great.
Right in the other room.
And a lot of good people meeting.
I think I have been welcoming and inclusive pretty much my whole life. I grew up in integrated environments, and I have, as long as I can remember, always felt like people are just people, and we should treat each other with kindness and respect.
And I think that's the big thing. I don't see how people cannot feel that way, but a lot of them don't.
Mm-hmm. And since it's not a videoed podcast, do you want to say any labels that you hold for yourself besides ally? That are there any ways that you see yourself besides an advocate and an engineer? Your husband,
all that.
Yeah. Well, people can't tell from voices.
Well, you might be able to tell from my voice. I'm a straight old white man. We were talking about this earlier.
Straight middle-aged white man. I have the old end of this stuff. Sorry.
Actually, it's a story I always tell about when we first convened in the Texas House, and I had won, and we were going to get sworn in for the first time. And although I know your government and this state is made up, it's controlled by old white men, I was surprised by just how old and how white they were.
Seriously, when you see the whiteness up close, it's different.
There's a lot of people I don't think even go out enough to get tanned. And in Texas, it doesn't take long.
It doesn't.
Yeah, when you hear the gavel up close, it's very different from the Capitol.
During campaign season, I hit a lot of doors, and so I typically
you're really big at like walking. Yeah,
it's a big thing. But I'm so political activist. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I'm a brother. I'm a cousin.
Yeah. You care about education. What are some of the topics you get behind? Yeah, so coffee. Definitely pro coffee.
Definitely pro coffee and pro whiskey and cigars, which I think we're not supposed to make a big deal out of. But
that's okay. If it's your big deal, it's your big deal.
Coffee first.
Yeah.
So what? When I originally decided to run for office, and there's like one person working on the campaign, and it's me. And so I designed the campaign literature. And my children's best friend is a dreamer, and also the person who has the combined best grammar for both English and Spanish at the same time. So he did all of my Spanish translations. So all of my campaign literature is English and Spanish.
Yeah.
And the reason that I bring this up is because I designed it myself. And every time I go to start a new election season, I think, okay, I'm going to go either design something new or update the last one. And I read it and I'm like, yeah, this is what I'm still about. It's public education, access to healthcare, equity, justice, and combating bigotry.
And just an inside-on-side type thing. When the first design came out, it was encyclopedic in its length. And I'm like, this is going to take me a week to read. This is your short version.
Got to be shorter, yeah.
Yeah, I got that advice. You have to make it bullet points.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, it was all good stuff, but... the novel can come later, after you're known.
Well, I know Alexis has a few things that we want to talk about today, but in this thread that you're saying, do you want to highlight any changes you've seen in those topics since you've actually been in the Capitol?
So it's, I think, the bigotry and discrimination piece. So if I have a life, one of my lifetime commitments is to fight bigotry and discrimination in all of its forms. That has really amped up in many ways. And it's othering anyone who doesn't look like them.
Yes. I'm nodding yes really hard.
Yeah, hard nods.
And so what we see now is othering to the point of dehumanization, which is extremely dangerous to the guy named Rosenthal. It actually should be to anybody, but if you've studied the history of, the Jewish culture should be dramatically concerned about an authoritarian movement that dehumanizes people and is now currently building concentration camps in Florida and Texas.
Yeah.
And it's so in this last cycle that has amplified.
Wow.
And really at an alarming rate. And the number of anti-LGBT bills multiplied, but also the number of anti-immigrant, anti-DEI.
The anti-DEI really, really bothers me, and banning books is just not okay with me.
It's so what I have said over and over is those who seek to ban books are never on the right side of history, and I've spoken out against that.
We went from Barbara Bush's reading list to banning books. Like, the party has changed a lot, and the rhetoric has increased. But like you said, when you were first writing your missions and what you were out for, those things were going on in Texas, and those things from Texas have definitely impacted and increased around the whole nation. And how do you find time to move on to your other topics, if you will? Like, I remember that you wanted to support school testing being changed, and we were last talking on a podcast about using the rainy day fund for having schools to be a little bit more safe. Like, do you think that any of those topics are actually getting listening space? Because sometimes they get maybe under-acknowledged by all the rhetoric in the news. We may not know if they're actually still getting covered.
So some are and some are not.
Okay.
We actually passed a bill out of the Texas House during the 89th session that we've just wrapped up last month to replace the STAR test with a nationally normed testing system.
Wow. I hadn't heard.
Which would be a big step.
Yeah.
The bill summarily died in the Senate.
I was going to say, it didn't make it all the way through, though.
It did not make it all the way through.
Okay.
But the fact that there is an appetite for it is very encouraging.
That's good.
So it's not all... There's a lot of horrendously bad stuff, but it's not exclusively bad stuff. There's still some positive developments that ideologues from across the spectrum can work together on.
And anything for school safety in the realm of, like, you were just coming on into the legislation after the Santa Fe incident, mass shooting, and we've been through Uvalde and who knows what else I can't name off the top of my head right now. But, I mean, is there still an appetite, if you will, for school protection or any new solutions to support that?
So, I'll just say that the people in charge in this state talk about that and then do the things that endanger our kids.
Okay.
And so while they talk about protecting our children and improving safety in schools, they have, in my time in the legislature, have just successively weakened gun laws. In this last session, they legalized sawed-off shotguns, and they made it illegal to have extreme risk protection orders.
Right.
So those things to me are just crazy stuff.
I don't understand it. I mean, sawed-off shotguns, I don't care one way or the other. I mean, it's still a gun, but it just happens to be wider. But the, no protection orders, I'm sorry, that's wrong.
And then earlier,
I think they're basically trying to get rid of the judiciary.
maybe, I don't know. So their extreme risk protection orders, banning that is mind-boggling.
Yeah.
The sawed-off shotgun fits in a category between other things. So you're right. Like, in Texas, we already, and in the country, we already allow, these high velocity semi-automatic weapons with large magazines. So sawed-off shotgun, while it's got a bigger spread and maybe easier to hide, which makes it ideal for home defense, I suppose.
But, I guess if I look at it, extreme risk, maybe they're looking at saying there's no extreme risk.
I have no idea, but these are...
And when I saw the two laws, I sort of saw that they were coming through at the same time. Now, my first thought was, well, might need a sawed-off shotgun given that I can't get the courts to protect me.
Yeah, no kidding, right? And and then actually, it wasn't last session, but the session before, was it 2020 when the state legislature passed the permitless carry stuff? So when I talk to our local law enforcement, so in my area, it's all unincorporated Harris County. So our law enforcement is sheriffs, constables, and the school districts. The large school districts have captive police departments, and they all think that permitless carry was the most dangerous thing the legislature has done. For our communities and for our kids.
I mean, we have had that before. And in fact, there's an argument that we still had it because we didn't get rid of it when we put in the carry permit type stuff. But
so when I was first sworn in 2019, gun violence was not among the top 5 leading causes of death for children in Texas. And now it's the leading cause of death for our citizens that are between 0 and 18 years old. So, people can say we literally have a gun lobbyist, who ran for office and now sits in one of the seats in the chamber, right? So we have a gun lobbyist amongst us, who will get on a microphone and insist that more guns make us safer. And my argument is, so how come as we relax the gun laws and we have more proliferation of guns, more and more children in this state die from gun violence?
Right. A hard nod here. Yeah.
And all I can say is more guns in Houston, and that's supposed to make us safer. So far, it hasn't worked.
Well, and one of the reasons why I highlight Santa Fe is because I know people who were lost there. But I also know that the teachers were armed and are ex-vets and, were actually pro-gun in a safe, user-friendly sort of Texas carry sort of way, not in a, overly in-your-face gun sort of way. And so it has a lot of examples that people end up going to, like, well, if the teachers just had firearms or if they were trained or whatever, like, they're not paying attention to where these things are already occurring. And that case is still not closed. And so a lot of the families have had to move on and do what they need to do for themselves. But I wonder, as we are just closing one legislation session and we're going into a special session, maybe a few, depending on what Abbott chooses, you are an ally. You came in with good missions that a lot of people can get behind, very necessary things, and they are increasing. You have now learned how to work the political calendar, which is different when you're in legislation, how to get things done, how to have conversations, how to move things through. How do you deal with those moments where the needle is not being moved in a direction that is safer for people on any of your agendas, whether it's bigotry, gun violence, I know a few more we haven't even talked about, but how do you stay in the game, stay motivated, not get defeated?
So it's incredibly stressful. Mm-hmm. It's emotionally gut-wrenching at times, for sure. Mm-hmm. I just personally believe you're only defeated if you have given up. Okay. So as long as you're breathing and still have the fight in you,
that makes sense.
There are opportunities.
Yeah.
My favorite little parable that may or may not be true is the story about Thomas Edison being interviewed by a young reporter as he was very old. And the reporter asked him about the light bulb deal and how the experiment failed 3,000 times before it actually worked. And he said, how did it feel, to fail 3,000 times?
Wow.
And Edison's response was, well, I didn't fail any times. It was just a 3,000 step process.
Well, and I keep telling our community something like, oh, we've lost everything. I'm like, not unless you quit.
Not unless you quit. So you're not defeated until you give up.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I get inspired by that. We're still here, but thank you for that, because it is hard. And I get so many people saying, I just can't watch the headlines anymore. And I'm like, probably shouldn't do that. That's not where all the facts really are. Or, I just read all the articles, or I just live streamed in and I did my best, or I even went to the Capitol. I even witnessed on, however many different topics, and spent my savings and lost my job because I was there too much because it wasn't my job. Like, I've seen so many things happen.
Sure.
But I actually find enjoyment in reading the headlines and then the article, because it's like, how did they get this out of this article?
Yeah, they're not the same.
And about half the headlines have nothing whatsoever to do with what the article says.
I know, right? We kind of live in a clickbait world.
Yeah, and then I go look at what the facts were behind it, and it's like, yeah, okay, so these are three totally different things.
Yeah, so it's just thanks for talking about it, because it's not every day everyone gets to actually hear their representative, or people have gone from, I never thought I would run, to running, and you're doing it, and like speaking on like the real daily struggle of, I wanted to make a difference and I'm doing it, but there's a lot of people in that legislature that are taking the mic in a different direction.
It's true.
Well, I had a question for you, that this is the point I should ask.
Go for it. Yeah.
That may get you in trouble, so you don't have to answer if you don't want to. You don't have to answer anything if you don't want to, obviously.
You don't have to.
See, is this a good enough setup now?
And in the entire time you've known me, how often do I actually care about getting into trouble?
I've never known you to care about it at all. But
we're here to make trouble.
Yeah, good trouble. Yeah.
Why do you think so many people are suddenly against equality, equity, diversity, inclusiveness, and all that? I mean, they've come out, and I think, maybe they've always been there and they've just now felt like they can come out. But it amazes me how the thrust of it is, oh, I don't want anybody that's not exactly like me. And the problem is nobody's exactly like anybody else.
So when did diversity and equity and inclusion become bad words? So like they literally use the and liberal too. If you look up the definition,
yes, sure,
it pretty much suits my sensibilities, liberal does. And the people who think that diversity is bad. Is that the question? How does
I look at it this way, unless you're Native American, we're all immigrants.
Exactly.
And, and you hear people talk bad about immigrants. And it's like, wait a minute. Who in the room, Native American? Okay, nobody. So we're all immigrants.
So what's funny about that, what's ironic is that the brown people that they're trying to get rid of are closer to being Native Americans than people that look like you and me.
Right.
But I think a lot of this is a product of the infosphere propaganda, the pervasive messaging. So it's no longer you're seeing an advertisement or two or somebody, speaking out at a stump speech. Now, people exist in a ocean of information.
That's true.
And so it comes at you on your phone, in your email, in your daily speaking.
So many different directions.
And it just becomes the most massive of echo chambers. And so the folks who stoke these fires of hate and divisiveness, ignorance, and fear are doing that on purpose.
Oh, yeah.
And it, some may be, I'm sure some of the leaders have, personal vendettas, whatever, or maybe they're self-haters in some cases.
Yeah, I mean, personal vendettas, I'm sort of okay with, because at least there's some reason.
Right. But I think a lot of it is the pursuit of political power. So it's pursuing, amassing, and maintaining political power. And so I am extremely disappointed by the whole thing because the only reason they do it is because it works for them.
Oh, yeah, and it does.
If you watched the Ted Cruz versus Colin Elrod campaign in this last cycle, Cruz on TV talking about transgender transgender women in sports. And that's the whole campaign.
Yes.
And it worked.
And it's all bullshit, to be really blunt.
It's super bullshit, but it's one of the most egregious hated politicians in the country
made it
wins by doing this. And you can expect that. So I'll just predict there's a strong possibility that our Attorney General, Ken Paxton, is going to defeat John Cornyn in the primary for United States Senator. It's going to be a cultural war campaign.
Oh, yeah.
It's all about that.
And, I think that's not a hard prediction to make, neither one of those. And I totally agree with it. And my biggest thing is that this has come about very heavily since, we elected the president and, the current one, whose name I tend to not say too often. But anyway, it seems like that's become okay. But I have a question for you. Let's say somebody goes and makes up something about me or my community, which they do all the time. I'm a transgender person, in case people didn't know. If this is the first podcast of these they've listened to, they might not know, but I am. I'm a transgender woman. So let's say that there's somebody out there that, starts posting all sorts of lies. If it were posted in something in print, I can go after them in court for money. If it's online, nobody seems to be able to do that. There doesn't seem to be any law that protects them because they're like, well, I was just quoting what someone else said. And it's always someone else. I don't think we should care. You should have to check your sources because, you're being a news outlet if you're one of the, quote, influencers or someone that has a wide spread, and you ought to check your sources and you should be responsible for that. But supposedly, and I say supposedly because I've been told this by a couple lawyers that may or may not know, supposedly there's nothing that legally lets me go after them and say, I want all your money because you've defamed me. And it's a lie.
Well, that should be true. I agree with you. So I agree with that. It should be true. You should be able to go after someone who let's just use the word tweet or posts.
Sure. Yeah.
Who posts about you or just repost something that someone else posted, they are still defaming you by doing that.
Exactly. And that's the way I see it. But, we don't ever do that. Now, I happen to think it would slow down a lot if there were a couple massive judgments that nobody could pay and you wouldn't expect them to pay that says, you've cost me this much and these problems. And so, it's something that I think may need to be looked at. And we probably have current laws that let you do it. It's just that you have to find lawyers who are willing to do it, unfortunately.
And judges who are.
Yeah, well, that's the second part.
Fairly, so.
Yeah.
We've had
And that's always a problem, too. But there's something else, too, and that is that filing a suit and getting it into court can be a win. Because it'll back so many people off who are like, wait a minute, I may not want to get into the middle of this mess.
I agree with that.
And win, lose, whatever. There's a couple of things recently that I've explained to people. I'm like, don't wait till you've done it. Announce it to the press that you're doing it. And you'll get as much coverage and maybe more. And that has worked actually really well.
I think that's true.
And
I agree with that.
And so many people don't do that. And so I think that's something we've got to start looking at.
I think that we should. And it's interesting that, so one of the things about being in politics and being the office holder and running for office is that campaign speech has a wide carve out for this. So what I'm saying is people can say whatever they want to about me. It's very difficult for me to bring a defamation libel lawsuit.
And I'm okay. You raised your hand and ran.
Yeah, I'm not complaining about that.
I know.
I'm just saying it's one of those things.
It opens you up to a lot.
It does, and so I can't worry about what people say about me because people say all kinds of stuff about me. It's wild.
Basically, I'm not a public figure, so if they say something about me, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
You don't have a right to do that.
Huge
No.
carve out for you. So
And I was a public figure for a little while, but I resigned.
So you should try to find someone who will forward legislation along those lines.
I know a couple people.
You might know a couple of people. I
and,
might be willing to file a bill.
and,
like
and
that.
and that's my biggest thing. It's like I see all these people saying it's horrible. Okay, that's fine. Saying it's horrible is great, but there may be something we can do about it.
There may actually be appetite to pass a bill like that. In this session, we passed bills through the House specifically concerning AI, so artificial intelligence, deepfakes, and the like, in campaign speech. And so if we can make it illegal for that without a disclaimer. So it wasn't that they made it illegal, which was what the far right was messaging on during the session.
Well,
They were saying, oh, you're not allowed to make a meme about the Speaker of the House or the President of the United States. It's like, no, it's that if you use artificial intelligence
You just have to say
an
it.
incredibly realistic image, you can just say, this image was created using AI.
Yeah.
You just had to have a disclaimer on it,
so that people know.
So people know.
Yeah,
Right.
because
So
AI
it
is
doesn't make
way
them
too
out, yeah.
good these days already.
And with the amount of money being spent, even in these House races, so we set records in this last cycle for the amount being spent. There was like a $20 million race out in Beaumont,
Wow.
trying to unseat the one who was at that time the current Speaker of the House.
Wow.
I was going to say, and that was ridiculous, the amount of money.
So remember when I first got elected, I had a tight campaign budget, but that budget was $50,000-$60,000. And the next session, when it became a heated competitive race, that campaign budget was $1 million. And my opponent spent $2 million trying to unseat me in 2020.
Yeah, and if you keep going up, you'll have real money.
$1 million here, $1 million there. Pretty soon you're talking about real money. But when you have $20 million being spent, in a House race in Beaumont, Texas House districts are 195 to 205,000 residents.
Yeah.
And so if you're spending $20 million, what is that, $10,000 a person?
And my view is just go buy them. In Beaumont, you can buy most of the votes you need for that. At least it's...
I believe technically that's illegal.
It is, but at least it's direct.
But I can tell you that the people of Orange County, Jefferson County, where all that went down, got sick of the television advertising.
Oh, no kidding.
nonstop,
Yeah.
It was ridiculous.
in a House race.
Yeah. People just start tuning it out.
Well, and you think about that much money, it only has 2 television markets out there, so you have to saturate them with that much money.
And that is the deal. And so in an environment where it used to be you could win a House race, $50,000, $60,000. Now it's $250,000 to $500,000, right? To unseat an incumbent.
And basically, let's go back to the 20 million. What about having that seat is worth 20 million to you?
So there's a question. The person who was in the seat at the time was the Speaker of the Texas House.
Yes,
so
I'm well aware of that.
Right. So one of the big three, the 3 most powerful
Who,
people in the
by
state
the
of
way,
Texas
in my opinion, wasn't bad.
wasn't.
I mean, he was
It
okay.
was bad. It wasn't awful. And he's actually, as it goes, he's actually a pretty nice person.
Yeah.
He's not an outrageous far-right ideologue.
Right.
Like the folks who were going after him.
But it was a power position.
It's a power position, so it's the Speaker of the House, and it's not that the person who defeats that person in a race will be the Speaker of the House. It doesn't work that way.
No.
Right.
The House still has to vote for the Speaker, right?
That's right. We elect the Speaker from the membership.
Yeah.
But they were going after him.
They wanted to get rid of him because he was fairly nice.
It was, there were a couple of things. He's in today's environment, a moderate Republican. And he impeached the Attorney General. So I should say he led an effort that had the Texas House of Representatives overwhelmingly impeach the Attorney General.
And the Senate, of course, said no.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother, acquitted in the Senate. And then the end of the story is that the Attorney General would not contest those charges in a federal court because everything they said in the Senate, not everything, a lot of what was used to defend him in the Senate would have resulted in federal charges
Right.
for perjury.
But that's okay. He's still running.
And now this person is very likely to be the next United States Senator from Texas.
And,
Wow.
and you know,
And the corruption was,
oh gosh,
the
it was,
evidence is bold. It's
yeah,
like black
it's
letter
ridiculous.
evidence. It's in your face, obvious. And people cheer him for that. Mm-hmm. Just like the president. The people cheer him.
Yeah, they're cheering him for very inhumane things. If we had, and not a very rough part of our humanity. You know, it's always been around. It's not new. What decade did bigotry and divisiveness come about? Well, I mean, I think it's always kind of been there, but that doesn't mean that we have to move forward with it. But it's really telling when there's a group of people still cheering for it outright in the streets, on the line, in your face, as your employer, as your representative.
Yeah, I mean, I've only been around politics since the mid-'50s. And I mean, really around politics. Mm-hmm. My father ran the Republican Party in southern half of Illinois, and his best friend who lived 3 houses down the street ran the Democratic Party in the southern half of Illinois. They were at our house all the time, and I sat there and listened a lot. You know, I mean, I thought it was normal for senators and representatives to drop over for lunch every weekend. Mm-hmm.
So here's what I find interesting, though. If we look back.
Well, let me finish my thought. The thing that is different, mm-hmm. There was lots of corruption. There was lots of other things, but it was to take care of people, not to harm them. I mean, Daley in Chicago, major corruption. I mean, I'm talking the original Daley. But he took care of the citizens. The crime rate was very low because he controlled it all. The social services were perfectly good. They came right out of his budget. And, you know, that was sort of the thing. It was like, okay, I may be corrupt. I may be sticking a bunch of money in my pocket, but I'm doing the stuff for the people at the same time. I don't see that now. I just see the money going in their pocket.
I'll tell you what I see is around the same time. So I was a teenager in Champaign, Illinois before we moved here. Champaign-Urbana, where the University of Illinois is. My father was teaching there when I was in early high school. And I was in Champaign when the Nazis got the permit to march on campus.
Right.
And so that's like a whole thing. Like there were protests, but at that time, the Nazis and the KKK, when they would march, they would cover their faces. And law enforcement would be out there without covering
exactly
because they're supposed to be the good guys. And now, 40 years later, we're in a place where the Nazis and the KKK don't cover their face, but the law enforcement people do.
Which really bothers me.
I
mean, I think basically law enforcement should have to show their badges. They should have to show their faces. And they're doing anything, and they don't do that anymore.
That's right.
And, you know, when somebody runs in and says they're law enforcement and they don't have a badge on, I'm not sure that if I was on a jury that I'd convict somebody who said I didn't think he was law enforcement. I thought it was somebody attacking me.
Well, even before that, though, we are recording July 3rd, you know, post-Pride, before the 4th of July, and nightly, whatever news you're watching, some will maybe not cover it as much, but some are covering it every single day around the hour. There are people taking people off the streets with no symbolism on their sleeves, no badges, no name, and they do have face coverings, and people are having a hard time stopping this from happening, including governors and mayors saying, like, we do not know if these are actually police or ICE or Homeland Security. I mean, they're speculating, but they don't know. So, I mean, before you even get to a court case, these people are being grabbed and taken, or they're being...
And you don't know where they're going, and there's no warrants, and, you know... All of the above. And they're grabbing U.S. citizens recently. I think it's accidental, but it doesn't matter. If you're a U.S. citizen and you get grabbed like that, there's no question about your rights. I think everybody else has the rights too.
I think it's often accidental, but this creates an environment where you have a modern day Gestapo.
It's more like brown shirts.
Brown shirts.
What's brown shirts?
That was the Nazi youth group that basically weren't really normal police, shall we say, that went out and did Hitler's bidding.
Ooh, yeah, I guess.
And I mean, they're the ones that burn the books.
So the precursor to the as the Nazi regime was rising.
Right. It was before they had the power to do anything else. But
so now they call themselves true patriots, and they wear face coverings that look like American flags.
Right.
And they are heavily armed, and they wear body armor, but they are not necessarily part of any law enforcement.
And in those situations, supposedly I'm just guessing it would be cops that stop those people, but I'm not seeing that. It would be
but the police, if they do intercede, tend to get attacked by federal officers.
Yeah,
they're supposedly federal officers. Nobody knows. They don't identify themselves as such. They identify themselves sometimes as Homeland Security. Mm-hmm. They have no identifying documents. If you ask for a warrant, they say they have one. They don't. Usually they have an immigration warrant that is pretty fictitious, and the courts have never seen it. The other part of it is, if they have gotten something from a court, it's an immigration magistrate, which is not a judge. Other than that, it's all fine.
Yeah, well, and I'm seeing news reports daily. So we're in Houston, Texas, and I see news reports daily about Houston police calling ICE on folks they have pulled over. So this is at traffic stops.
Right.
These aren't the worst and the nastiest criminals.
Right.
This is somebody who was speeding because they didn't want to get run over. And in Houston, if you go the speed limit,
anybody,
you can get run over.
Not even necessarily a traffic infraction.
Right.
They could pull people over for any reason.
Well, driving for not being white.
Exactly.
Let's just be honest. And so I just wanted to presence the fact that this has been, you two were saying there have been times in your life where you've seen this and it has changed and altered. And then I do want to bring us back to today, because we are in a state where this is happening, but we're, even if I was sitting, I'm born in California. Even if I was sitting in California, I would be in a state where it's happening, So the states who have had privileges of ignoring some of these things or thinking that they were not going to have to go through some of these things while watching Texas go through it all along, they're really grappling with it in the moment as well. So
I saw a news report where somebody in Montana was saying, well, they haven't really had this problem. They don't have people.
That's fair. That's fair.
Not to joke about it, but that wouldn't be any place that you're going to have a whole lot of people that ICE could pick up. They might find a Canadian or two, but that's pretty much it. But because this is 2025, it's going pretty bad as far as personal freedoms and those sorts of things.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. We'll see where we go with this, but I think it's hard to know what to do based upon the current happenings, and not everyone has the same accessibility and actions that other people do. It depends on what you're doing. I could say, well, get out there and push back, get into the streets. Well, not everyone has that privilege. Not everyone has that availability. And
I don't think that works.
And some people do, but here we are.
I know a lot of people think it works. I don't. I'll be really blunt. I think we need to be more intelligent than that. We need to be better planned than that. We need to do a lot of other things, because the problem is, in my mind,
in your mind,
and this is my mind, we had a fair election. Trump won. Trump is doing what Trump said he would do. Now, he's doing it in ways that I don't think any of us dreamed he might do it. And I happen to believe in democracy. I don't like the way it sometimes turns out. Like this one, I really don't like the way it turns out. But let's see what the midterm does. Hopefully it will correct some of it. That's a hope. And hope's one of those things that's sort of weird. But I mean, he did win, and all the people are like, well, it wasn't a fair election. It was as fair as any election. I mean, I don't think there was a whole lot of corruption. Now, do I think there was a whole lot of misinformation that went out from who knows where? Yeah, probably from all sorts of our enemies around the world, et cetera. But that's what we have today. And since we have no way to combat it, really, we're stuck with it.
Well, that's kind of the landscape. That's the environment that we operate in. And so we just have to adapt to that.
Right.
So I would hope that whether they're conservative or liberal minded, anybody of good conscience cannot witness what's happening
that's my hope.
By that.
And
you expect to see a backlash in the midterms. Let's see if that happens. But I think we're already seeing encouraging signs of that.
And one of the problems, from my point of view, is that we have a two-party system. And the two parties have spent a lot of effort and time making sure it's impossible to get a third one.
It's true.
I mean, it is so hard to create another party that it's ridiculous. And the two-party system right now, the Republicans are extreme, to be really blunt. And everybody's scared to death of the president. And it's the type thing where that's not good. The Democrats are disorganized. They don't seem to be coming up with any plan. It's sort of a woe is me, we'll defend like crazy. Well, that's not going to help change things, if you will. I mean, the last election, in my opinion, was done extremely poorly. They didn't get buy-in for Kamala in any way, shape, form, or fashion, and they picked an issue that half the people in the country don't care about.
Who picked an issue?
The Democrats.
And what issue did they pick?
Abortion.
Huh.
Well, going back further.
And when I say half the people don't care about it, most the males don't care about it.
Going back further, Biden was, basically a Hail Mary. Like, he didn't want to run himself. He did, based upon whoever was backing him or pushing him. But, I mean, at that point, we had 11 different type of options, from Pete Buttigieg to Amy Klobuchar to Yang, and I don't see a lot of those options still in existence. I agree with Alexis. Like, I don't see a huge Democratic plan to counter some of the things that are happening.
Now, I will say it's getting better at the national level. They figured out that people who are going to be able to make change is a good idea. And hopefully we don't get somebody in the Carolinas that decides, okay, I get to pick who it is. Otherwise, you don't get any of the votes in our community. That was the Biden pick, in my opinion. And then, I will state that I do have opinions.
Which is all fine. I mean,
yeah.
In 2020,
right,
that worked out.
Yes.
And I do feel like the Biden presidency was historically effective, just based on what actually happened and not what people say about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was effective in some areas.
So, granted.
It did nothing for diversity.
Let him give his opinion.
Okay.
The issue about what happened in 2024, that's just, what I would politely call a Charlie Foxtrot.
Yes.
Where you're trying to reelect a 80-something, an octogenarian, and then, you have a choice between two really demonized, hated politicians. Mm-hmm. So in my mind, the Democrats need to do more than just get organized. They have to re-embrace core philosophies that are the Democrat ideals. I think I embody those things, but I'm also an old white guy. So the Republicans do a very good job not only of messaging and staying on message and harping the same points over and over again once they find something effective, but they also do a very good job of developing their bench and bringing up young up-and-comers through the ranks and getting them acclimated to winning elections in local races, school boards, city council, that sort of thing. And Democrats tend to get old and die in office. And so they're not developing the bench or succession plans. And if you subscribe to the notion that it has to be the younger generation that saves us, because I kind of believe this, you have to have those people coming up. And
you got to have a younger generation.
Their voices have to be heard. So they don't, they have to more than just exist. They have to be promoted and elevated and helped along the way.
Right. I mean, federally, the Democrats could have a pretty good bench right now. The problem is that they've beat them up like you wouldn't believe and have not endorsed them.
Well, locally, we had an opportunity to elect Amanda Edwards, who was younger and viable, and the caucus and, Greater Houston was warned that we have an elder in this seat. What happens if Sheila Jackson Lee, who did look quite sickly at the time, goes in and gets sick and passes away? Well, it was brought to their attention that if you know civics, that means Abbott gets to say when the next election happens or not. So you could be having an empty seat. And right now they have an empty seat because not only did they elect Sheila, they elect Turner, who also was a cancer survivor. And I'm not in that district, but here's the thing. I could be like, well, that's their choice. I'm not in their district. I have no say in that. But then you look at a federal level where right now the big bill could be using those votes for a representative to be there. I mean, and it's an empty seat.
There are several things that have passed by one vote.
It affects the nation, and then in this time where people are told, do what you can, call your representatives. Okay, who do they call? What do they do? And I mean, sometimes we have to just stop and say, look, yes, these actions can make a difference, but some of these actions are ineffective and a waste of people's time, labor, and emotions because it is really tough and people are dealing with a lot right now. For instance, I really want to know, which party has accountability? Do we have accountability for all the times we fumble on the Democratic side? Do we have accountability for all the illegal things? I don't give a shit if he was rightfully elected. He's elected. He's in the seat. Okay, great. We're still talking about December. I'm talking about people being taken off the streets now. So our current president and our houses, whether that's at a federal place or a state place or even a city place, are still well, this other side, has the majority, or, well, I guess I'll do what I do. And who actually holds these people accountable? I don't see it.
I mean, it has to be the voters, but some way or other we have to figure out how to get that to the voters.
It's true. It has to be the voters, but the part about having engagement and involvement and activism is how that happens. And I think if people get depressed, dejected, or feel like they have no voice or their voice doesn't make a difference, that kind of apathy really feeds the whole cycle.
For sure.
And then the voter suppression and there's another word that I'm seeking, but when we gerrymander our districts, or it seems like elections don't matter because
your vote doesn't matter, or even if you're somebody who shows up chronically and you're getting voter fatigue, you're voting out the wazoo because you show up for every, Harris County has a lot of voting, I mean,
we vote frequently.
There's a lot of voting.
So the saying is any given Tuesday.
Pretty much. You can go down and vote just because.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing that, but it does have some side effects of, is it enough? Does it matter? Does my voice make a difference? And some people get sort of numb to it or dull to it, or they keep going, and some people get reactive to it, right? So it just depends.
I agree with that. And what we saw in 2016, 2017 into 2018, the wave that I got elected in, I think we're seeing the sparks of that kind of activism now. We just had a monster, historic nationwide protest. We had 1,000 people show up in my area.
With
Cypress, suburban.
With the No Kings, or is that what you're talking about? With the No Kings?
Protest.
Okay. All right. So
And so people at some point, there will be a backlash to the feeling that your vote is suppressed or doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. There's like, hey, I'm done with feeling like we cannot affect change. And that's when you see people turn out by the thousands. And some of these vote margins in these races are pretty narrow.
Oh, the vote margins have been very narrow.
And that's what we have to keep saying. We have to keep telling people, like, no, really, like, I say it so many times. There's been elections after this, but one of my city council members lost her seat by 16 votes. And she's in the near north side and the Heights. Those people pride themselves on showing up. But the truth is a lot of those polls are probably going to be shut down because they're not frequented anymore. But, 16 votes is, most of us can do that, and then a lot of, like, the big bill, like, it's only losing by one vote, 2 votes. I mean, it's still being rehashed right now, but it's important to keep in that reality.
And then Pasadena, they had to do a coin toss because it was tied.
I remember this.
Yeah.
I mean, this was like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
That they did the coin toss. It was Pasadena City Council.
Yeah, in 2020 with 74,000 votes cast, I won by 300 votes.
Right.
So it's a tiny little margin.
And that's the big thing.
Wow.
It's closer than people think a lot of times. And it seemed like it. Okay.
So, go ahead.
So I'm going to point us a different direction.
Please.
We've been going the woe is me direction from my point of view.
I don't think so. But yeah.
So what things do you think? Well, we have a special session coming up. And then, of course, right on the heels of the special session, there'll be a general session coming up soon. I mean, y'all are not in session all the time, but the 2 weeks you get off in between, I think, are not much. So what positive things do you think might happen in the special session and the next general session?
So first, I think we just need to stop calling them special sessions.
I know, they're just sort of like number 2.
It's a called session. So the governor gets to call a session. And this, in the very first place, creates the argument for amending our state's constitution so that the legislature works full time and gets paid like a living wage.
Okay.
So that, to me, in the second largest population and second largest economic state in the union, where we think we can govern the affairs of the state 140 days every other year, is, in my mind, ridiculous.
Well, but as you well know, we don't think that, but the governor likes to be able to run things with a couple other statewide officials.
Exactly. So the governor has indicated that he will call a special session, a called session starting on July 21st. And there's a few bills that deal with legal type of issues, like actually sort of jurisprudence law stuff, the creation of some new courts, and that sort of thing. Also, he vetoed the lieutenant governor's hemp ban.
Which I thought was great, actually.
Which is good.
Yeah. I mean, banning is a bad word, in my opinion. Regulate and go with it because...
Regulate and tax it. So this is
exactly
$8 billion a year industry in Texas that the lieutenant governor thinks we should just end. And if you make it illegal, then it just disappears overnight. Apparently, that's what he thinks. I think an $8 billion a year industry, if you suddenly make the product illegal, it just goes underground overnight.
Yeah, you just stop getting any taxes from it.
And your ability to
probably
control it anyway.
It's gone.
Right.
So your ability to regulate, or tax it or manage it in any kind of reasonable way just evaporates.
I mean, we have figured out multiple times that something that's illegal we can't regulate. You can regulate legal things.
Go figure. So
but we seem to forget.
If you just suddenly make the hemp industry illegal, all the CBD shops and all those products and all that stuff, $8 billion a year industry, that's just a gift to organized crime and cartels, right? Because they'll be the ones that market these things. So the Senate, controlled by Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, passed a ban. And then we churned it. It came in the House and it became a regulatory structure, which was strict, but still it was sensible. And then it went back and they passed it as a ban again. So it ended up going to the governor's desk as a complete ban. And the governor vetoed that. Yeah. It has called the special session ostensibly to enact controls, because if you can't get a bill passed, you can't actually change or make a law. It's kind of how it works. And to get a bill passed to change a law or make a new law, you need the governor, the lieutenant governor, and the Speaker of the House kind of on board. I think the Speaker of the House is agnostic when it comes to hemp policy. I don't think he actually feels strongly about it, like emotionally, like the governor and the lieutenant governor do. Mm. If they can't agree, you cannot make a new law.
Right.
So we're going to convene on the 21st, subject to the call of the governor. So he hasn't issued his proclamation calling us in, but he's announced it in the news and given the list of bills that he wants us to take up. So we'll see if that actually happens. I feel confident that I will be in Austin on the 21st.
Yeah, pretty confident.
A new session. And there will be this 6 bills or whatever the number is. He can add whatever he wants.
Yeah, which I expect he will.
I expect he will.
I have no idea what they're going to be, but...
So the speculation is that he'll add a redistricting to the call.
Oh, yeah.
They want to draw new district lines. We're talking about the change in the federal government body makeup because of the midterm elections. And so the Trump administration has called on the red states to re-gerrymander to pick up a few extra seats to try to protect their majority
in the House.
And as somebody who's been through a redistricting process, and for those who have no idea what this takes, there's like a whole presentation on redistricting. But I mean, do you think that there's any more squeezing that they can do with these lines, that they're going to draw, or do you think it's a potential danger? Or
so it is a potential danger. So we're already gerrymandered.
Out the wazoo.
Yeah. I mean, the Senate, there's stuff they can do, maybe.
The state Senate?
No, the federal U.S. Senate district. But those are really clearly defined. I mean, there's not much they can do with them. So if they're redistricting the House, the U.S. House...
Yeah, that's the only thing you can actually do.
Yeah, you can do that.
You can do the state.
But what you're going to have to do, because of their previous redistricting, is anything they do is going to dilute their current absolute districts.
That is correct.
Because they've done it so much that there aren't extra Republican districts around.
The state is artfully...
Yeah. It's really serious. I mean, I've screamed with the political caucus, and when people sit at the table for different seats and whatnot, they'll hand like a picture or a card with their actual district on there. It's the most wackiest shape you can't even imagine. Like you might be running for what you consider in Houston. I remember Fran Watson, but then like she's having to go all the way out to the ship channel for some of her people too. I mean, it's really a big. There's large weird areas.
It is true. So while they might be able to pick up a couple of seats, the only way to do that is by diluting the Republican majority in some of those districts.
Okay. So what's the potential danger? Is it that?
Well, it can't. It's not sustainable long term. So that the rumors that I hear is that our congressional delegation in Texas, the Republican congressional delegation, is against doing it.
Yes.
Because they don't want to weaken their positions.
Yeah, sure. I can see that.
The Democrats obviously are against it because they don't want to lose seats, which is what they think.
Sure.
There is the the possibility that the whole exercise becomes ironic in that they draw maps seeking to win an extra seat or two, but lose 2 or 3 seats because you're diluting your majority in a year where activism is on the rise, and any seat that's mildly competitive is winnable in that environment. That's literally how I won.
And we do have some people coming in from other states to Texas still with a lot of the business that's coming in. So some of the seats or some of the districts that look like they would be heavily Republican may not be that way by the time they finish.
That's true.
The population increase has been dramatic.
Yeah.
And with all this hospital needs out in the rural area and things like this, like there might be a lot of shift of heart depending on if they actually get resources or lose resources. We'll see.
So hospital closings, school campus closings, public schools in some areas went to 4-day instruction weeks.
It's a big deal.
It's a big deal. And so the leadership in the state may be hesitant to do that. So we'll see. I am the vice chairman of the redistricting committee in the Texas House. And so
I like how you save that title to right now.
if that gets added to the call,
You'll be busy.
I'll be busy.
Yeah.
So it's funny because I get the title. I got a cool gavel with a little nameplate on it for my service. During this session, during the regular session, that committee did not convene. So we didn't even meet once. But because your office budget gets increased when you're a chair or a vice chairman, I gave everybody in the office a raise. We spent the money, on the people at work who actually do the heavy lifting.
I mean, I'm sort of glad they didn't meet.
I wanted to forward a bill to require the state so actually a bill and a constitutional amendment that will work together to require that the state does redistricting using a nonpartisan commission using open source computer software.
Yeah, I have a question.
The maps.
Yeah, no, I like that actually, but I have a question. Is there such a thing as nonpartisan with politics? I mean, I hear nonpartisan commissions and I look at half the people on it and I'm like, they're so partisan you wouldn't believe.
So, don't bother me with semantics.
Oh, okay.
Let's not let facts get in the way of,
exactly.
of our ideals. But the states that have done this, when it's technically nonpartisan, so finding people who are actually not partisans in Texas might be difficult. But if the commission has appointees from specific places so that you've at least got a good mix.
Yeah.
And then you're using the open source software to draw the districts based on the principles of the constitutional principle. It's a novel concept.
Right.
The constitutional principle of
Oh, that thing, it just gets in the way, doesn't it?
collecting communities of common interest along geographic boundaries. That's the sort of thing that you can make an argument.
And would this be
about.
the Texas Constitution?
Yeah.
Or okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's what it's supposed to be. They have allowed the legal argument to draw districts to quote unquote preserve incumbency, which is completely different from collecting communities of common interest along geographic boundaries and so all the districts should be kind of blobby blobs without a lot of fingers or tentacles or
It shouldn't wrap around the city and come in the other side.
So what they do now is they take a slice of the city, which is, more Democrat leaning, and connect it to a huge swath of rural area, which is more Republican leaning. And so you just negate
Hope for your best. Yeah.
the slice in the city to be balanced out by the huge chunk in the
Yep.
in the country. And you see that in Austin a lot. They don't have,
Oh, you see that all over Texas.
you see it all over Texas. So
Yeah.
so yeah, I wanted to advance a bill like that.
And have you heard of new strategy about placing bills going into the next opening for bills coming out of this last stretch? I mean, the people that you're connected with, are they presenting different ideas at this point, or they're just sort of resting because it's been a long legislation session?
Whenever the rumors about this type of subject matter come out, there's a whole lot of conversation or behind the scenes about strategizing the best way to go about it.
Sure.
The Republicans have the votes, and even if there are some folks who may not agree on their side, they're unwilling to cross the line, and we saw that on the school voucher.
Right.
So that was one of the big products of this legislative session, where your public tax dollar is going to subsidize private school education for a small number of students in the state.
Yeah, and homeschooling.
And while a number of Republicans opposed that ideologically, almost none of them were willing to vote against it when it came to voting against Abbott and Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a problem, actually.
And so it's also a problem for the gerrymandering thing, because it creates, when you draw only safe seats, it creates an environment where the representatives are ever more polarized because their electorate is more polarized. And the only thing that matters is your primary election. The general is not competitive.
Yep. And a lot of them aren't heavily primaried.
It's true. I don't understand why, but I do.
I was going to say, yes. Because people want to go into politics and continue. But
it's influence, it's money, and it's incumbency, longevity. All those things stack up against a primary challenge.
So it sounds like you have enough to keep you busy for the rest of the year.
Okay, so I plan to be in Austin starting on the 21st for however long we have to do what we have to do. I'm planning on having a safety forum in concert with local law enforcement. Harris County Sheriff's Office has agreed to do it with me, and that will probably be early in August. Middle of August is my birthday. I have a big birthday fundraiser party
it's a fun time. Yeah.
Which is a fun time that you will be invited to.
Yeah, we went last year. It was a fun time. Yeah.
Same place, same lady is hosting us this
year.
Nice. And then coming right out of that, I actually have to raise money for, not just for re-election, but I'm incredibly active in the school board races in our area. So Cy-Fair Independent School District and Katy Independent School District. And Cy-Fair, which is most of the area I represent, has a school board dominated by right-wing Christian nationalists. And so we are looking to regain a sane majority. And so I'm heavily invested emotionally, personally, and financially. My campaign is going to contribute heavily in that race.
And it seems like Katy is also stacked with that as well, right?
They're stacked, but they're actually more moderate.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
the Cy-Fair School Board at this point has become
very.
I mean, Katy in their last election, one person sort of switched the school board side because the majority, I think, is against banning books and is against banning everything.
Right. A lot of people move to suburbia where these really good school districts are for the schools. And so it becomes a hot topic.
Yeah. Oh, it absolutely does.
I'm going to be, that's one of the reasons I live where I live. My wife and I getting engaged and combining a family, and she wants the children in Cy-Fair schools. And that's where we live.
And how old are your kids now?
My little ones are 32 and 37.
Okay.
So they're about to turn 33 and 38.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, that's something.
So what else do you have?
Sorry, 30. They're 30, 33 and 38 now. So they're going to be 34 and 38.
Oh, okay.
At what point in planning for the next legislature do you start writing these bills? Do you just sort of go about it as they come up, or do you have like a time where you're like, okay, no, it's about to be the month before we present it. We really got to get the verbiage down on what we want to present for a bill.
So one of the advantages of incumbency is I can use those resources to draft my bills now.
Okay.
So I can, notwithstanding the fact that a special session will come up and I will have the opportunity to file bills that are part of the subject of the call. So during a special session, we can only file bills that are related to the to the call of the session. But I also work pretty much year round with constituents and advocates and folks on crafting my legislative slate for the next session. And so while it's the quiet time during the interim between sessions is the time to get these bills drafted, because the folks that do the drafting work in the Capitol are less busy.
Okay.
And so like this session that we just finished, I walked in with probably 30 bills already drafted. And so on the day when you can start filing, during early filing, I can file, everything I want to in the first week or so.
Do you know and maybe you don't, but I'm just curious because as a person who observes the legislation session for a couple of sessions now, you are in community groups, and a lot of the community groups watch what kind of bills are coming up, and they speak to this. Oh, there's 5 for this. There's 10 for this. This one looks really bad. This one looks potentially good. Lottie, lottie, lottie. Some people have trackers for these things depending on the topics that they like. Do you know what are sort of the average amount of bills that a representative brings to the legislature? Is there such a number? Like, is 30 a lot for you, or is that a small number? I'm not sure.
So it's a good question, and it varies greatly.
Okay.
So last session, I know reps that filed like 5 bills.
Okay.
And I filed 50.
Okay.
So, and I know reps that filed 100 or more. There's, you can file, there's no limit other than the functional limit of the people who do the work. There's a limit to how much stuff you can drive on. So it takes a huge amount of effort just to get a bill through committee and onto a House calendar, especially for a member of the minority party. I had 10 bills heard. So I had 10 bills heard in committee of the 50 that I filed. And I passed 3 off the House floor. 1 was signed by the governor. So for me, that's actually a pretty successful.
I was about to
Yeah.
say, that sounds like success.
And which one was that? Did you already say that? I'm not sure.
The bill that I passed?
Yeah.
It was around public education, and it's a bill so that children with chronic or life-threatening illnesses cannot be penalized for the absences associated with those illnesses.
Wow, that's
So
very
pretty good
important.
stuff.
Yeah.
This
thank you.
session, actually, I passed a bill off the House floor to end child marriage in Texas, which is very near and dear to my heart. Would not get a hearing in the Senate. So go figure.
Right.
But it got a majority vote off the House floor to just raise the age to 18, no exceptions.
Thank you for doing that. So now the age is 18 and above to be able to be married?
Nope, the bill died in
Or-
the Senate. So
died, okay.
You can get married in the state if you're 16 or 17 if you're emancipated
Okay.
from your
Okay.
family.
And when you submit bills, are they always heard or thought of or put on a calendar, or no, they just sit there until somebody puts it on the calendar, wants to hear it in a committee? What's the process after everyone submits and they have like a cutoff time for all the submission?
That's right. So the calendar includes deadlines and cutoffs and all that sort of thing. But the basic process is you file a bill. The bill is referred by the Speaker's office to one of the substantive committees. And then that committee is not required to hold a hearing. So you have to ask for a hearing.
Okay.
Once you get that, if you get heard, because it's at the discretion of the chair of the committee. Once you get a hearing, you try to whip the votes. If you think the majority of the members of the committee will vote for it, and I find that out by actually talking to them.
Sure.
If you can get it voted out of committee, then it gets sent to the House Calendars Committee, and then you have to lobby the members of that committee to get it placed on a calendar.
So you're submitting the bills, there's a cutoff time for all bills submitted, and then what I'm wondering is does someone say, all the bills that were submitted? So every bill has an option to go to committee, or no, they get to pick which ones they want to bring to committees. Does that make sense?
So the way it works is every bill that's filed is referred to a committee.
It is.
That's
Okay.
the process.
Okay. And then
Now, it doesn't have to be heard. It's up to the chairman of each committee whether or not they wish to entertain a bill in a committee hearing.
do you know, either one of you, like how many bills are submitted per legislature each year, like roughly?
No.
Or we have no idea?
It varies widely. This last
Okay.
session was something like 9,000 bills
Okay.
filed.
So that's a lot. Yeah. I mean,
That's
it
a lot.
seems like it, because our legislation season's not very long.
It's 140 days. And the first
Right.
60 days, you can't actually hear a
bill.
bill.
I mean, that's what's interesting. There's all these cutoffs where 140 days seems short, but you have to knock 60 days off the front for doing work on it other than just whipping it, I
There
guess.
you go. So I actually have these numbers handy because I was
Okay, wonderful.
I got asked this question recently.
Okay, let's restate the question.
All right. So the question is about the number of bills that get filed in a session. So I
Okay,
don't know
for
what
te-
an
for
average
Texas,
is,
right.
but this was a heated session with a lot of bills filed.
Okay.
So the total bills filed, House bill and Senate bill, 8,719.
Wow.
Passed, House and Senate, 1,213. And then the total that were vetoed was something like 28.
Wow.
And so
Wow.
the rest of the bills became laws.
Wow. Thank you for those numbers, because, you know, as you're just observing these legislations, you hear, oh, well, there was a furries bill, or, oh, well, there was a hate bill, or, oh, well, there was actually this important let's raise the salary for teachers bill. But you're not tracking in like 8,000 bills. You're not tracking in 28 vetoes. You're not tracking in what actually got passed. And I often wonder, what are the real numbers, you know, behind all this stuff.
And
So
my
thank you.
question always when we look at numbers like that, because I have looked at them before, is do we really need that many new laws? and you know, there's some that I like that I think, yes, we need those. But then there's a whole lot of others that I'm like, is this really necessary?
It's funny that many people in the state feel the way that you feel, but everybody has different stuff that
Of course.
think there needs to be laws for or against or improved, or, you know, so it's complicated. The law stretches into all sorts of things.
And sometimes we need to go back and take the laws off the books. I mean, that takes time too. And I think this last legislation was the time, and I hope this is right because I read Texas Tribune and I followed them a little bit, was the first time that they actually took some of the anti-gay laws off the books. Does that ring a bell?
I don't know if it,
Like the sodomy laws?
yeah, so I don't know if that passed the Senate.
Okay.
It
See,
did
it's hard.
pass the House, and
Okay.
Benson Jones out of Dallas
Okay.
passed that bill off the House floor.
Okay, because see, it could be hard. I could read it past one thing and then I forgot there's this whole other passing process and keeps going.
He
Okay.
did pass a bill to repeal the anti-sodomy law.
Okay, because it's not off the books yet, or
Not that
before
I
this
know.
legislation it wasn't. So,
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
one
That
of the,
was a historic accomplishment, just
Yes.
like my child marriage ban was. And just because it didn't become a law, this session advanced the effort past where it's ever gone before.
Well,
And
in
so
both
it's
of
only
those-
a matter of time.
it's only a matter of time. I mean, I'm just, my mind's, I really thought that if people knew what was happening, could live stream in or actually keep up with the truth, their mind would be blown on the fact that these are still on the books, or that these still need to be laws. You know, like, I don't know if you surveyed like 20 people walking into McDonald's, are you aware that this is still on the books? Like, I don't think that they know that, you know, or what would you guess the legal age is to get married? Like, I don't, you know what I'm like, I think the modern perspective may be more aligned with what you're pitching than what is actually happening. So I'm glad that you're bringing the spotlight to it, because I think there's a lot of people who walked on and was like, this is handled already.
well, legal age to get married, all I can say is ours is better than Kentucky.
It's true. You know, in this state, we still have a constitutional provision in our state constitution that requires anyone to affirm that they believe in God in order to serve in your legislature, which is boldly unconstitutional, violates the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. But there's no appetite to repeal the provision.
Not when you're trying to get commandments put back into schools and things.
Does it say which God? Just thought I'd
And
ask.
so and there's a piece of paperwork to fill out where you can actually say, I'd rather not say, and they won't stop you.
Right.
But remember, I registered as agnostic, and I may be the first one to ever do that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow.
in real life, I identify more as multi-religious, but I think agnostic fits.
Yeah.
And we've had this conversation before, and I got a lot of attention for that. And the question is, why do you keep this provision in your state constitution? Well, it would take a whole effort with a 2/3 majority of both the House and the Senate, and then a statewide referendum. And the argument is, well, we don't try to enforce it, so it's not harmful
Yeah.
until it is.
I was going to say, until someone does enforce it.
Exactly. And so in an environment where, like you said, they passed Senate Bill 10, which requires public schools in the state to display the 10 Commandments in every classroom if they are donated. It's boldly unconstitutional.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So it's aimed at a Supreme Court challenge.
Okay.
I mean, it's just what it is. But in the meantime, those will be displayed in all classrooms in the state where they're donated.
And the real question is exactly what discussion will be held around them.
So are you going to tell kindergartners what adultery is?
Obviously, except that would be banned because you can't have any books to explain it to them.
There you go.
You know, I mean,
I don't know. I think some of these things that get past the practicality of them are really rough, and then kind of like what Alexis said, you'll see these headlines and you think it gets passed. And last legislature, when they were trying to do the drag bans, I myself didn't even know which spaces have been, pressed on by these laws. Is it public libraries? Is it 18 and below? Is it 18 and above? What actually happened? And it's like sometimes you have to go up and actually ask the bar owners, like what actually happened. How long did it last?
The newspapers are in a big hurry to be the first ones to report it. So they report that someone filed a bill about, and they report it as though it's a done deal. And I'm sort of like, there's a lot of bills filed.
Right.
And I think that's the really big difference.
Mm-hmm. So are you looking forward to any other new bills this next legislature that you're going to work on, or maybe not? Maybe now's not the time to talk about it. I'm not sure if that's something people are excited about or they keep under wraps before they actually get it done. I'm not sure.
No, there's priority items that I would continue to carry or newly file. You want to build on the effort that you've already, like sometimes it takes more than one try to get something passed, obviously.
Sure.
And so 4 sessions in, I finally passed this bill off the House floor to end child marriage. I filed that bill again in a heartbeat, along with a slew of others. So, and then there are a few, when we get into these conversations and debates, I'm like, oh, you know what? Somebody should make a law.
Nice.
Or change a law.
Nice.
And so we have this, we have a weekly team meeting with my
so you're keeping some
staff.
tabs on the things that need to get done.
My whole staff, which is 2 humans.
I was about to say, it's a huge staff.
Yeah, actually it's 3. 3, I got 1 in the district and 2 in Austin.
Nice.
But we have, weekly conversations where we get on Zoom together and we talk about what things to get drafted or, of course, it's all confidential until you actually file it.
Okay.
So
Okay. Good to know.
We can draft hundreds of pieces.
Sure.
And then coming into the session like this last time in the early days, just in the weeks before we were allowed to file, we had a series of meetings thinking about what we want to file, what we want to file first, what are our priority items that we really want to push on and try to actually pass.
Wonderful. And so what do you do for your self-care in between all these things?
What is that?
Okay.
How to phrase it? You just took my question that I had coming up.
Actually, I've become so more focused on that as the work gets more immersive and more taxing on my emotional well-being.
Because it's intense. It really is.
It's intense, and it's a dramatically unhealthy lifestyle. It's very fluid.
It's a lot of long hours.
A lot of long hours. You don't eat at regular times. The stuff that, I mean, if you are trying to eat healthy, which as I get to a certain age becomes increasingly important for my ability to function normally, you have to plan that because what's available to you, like the truth is, there's food provided in all the spaces, and you can, there's food in the committee rooms, and there are lobbyists who will bring lunch to the offices to get some a little face time.
That makes sense.
And so the staff never has to pay for their own meals during a session, which I think is fine, which is good.
Yeah.
But if I go with that, then every session before this one, I have.
Like what kind of food are we talking? Like donuts, or you're like, I'm not going to see anyone unless they're bringing salads. Like, what are we talking about? Like,
sometimes we have a choice, and sometimes we don't.
Okay. Smoothies or bust. That's
exactly.
It. Yeah.
So no, I. This time I made a real effort to eat healthier, exercise more, as much for my body well-being as for my personal sanity.
Sure.
And then also to spend, to actually schedule time when I get to spend with my wife, my kids, my dogs. Good. All that is good for me.
Good. I'm glad that you're doing that. And I don't think I'm overstepping here to say that you look like you have more vitality. Like you look like, you don't look as exhausted as some people coming out of the legislature. And maybe that's because you're mastering your calendaring in a better way and you're prioritizing in a better way. I hope so. And,
I've had a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
The last few weeks of the session were really
tough.
Difficult. Very long hours. And it's like an experiment in sleep deprivation.
Right.
Really wild.
This is not good.
People think we don't work because early in the session, the calendar is light. You're not taking up legislation. You might only be in the chamber, 3 days during the week. And we got a lot of folks making noise about how these people just don't do anything. And they're grifters that $600 a month or that we get paid. That's a thing, apparently.
It's making people mad. It's too much. Oh, no. Yeah.
Crazy to me.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, representatives...
That doesn't even cover gas money.
I was going to say representatives, and I mean anybody that represents us. I've always felt we should pay massive amounts of money, but they don't get to earn anything or accept any donations once things start session-wise.
Sure.
I mean, like somebody's like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, U.S. Congress and Senate, $1 million a year.
That would be a lot.
Why not? I mean, how much of the defense budget do you have to save to get that? Not very much.
Well, and having you also said it would be easy to remedy a lot of things if we tax lobbyists or something this.
That's my most unpopular thing.
What is it?
The best source for more income is to tax political donations, 50%. It just cuts down the amount of time that people can buy airtime. and
John's like, help.
And we tax the money that's raised in Texas.
So in concept, in theory, it sounds fine.
I know.
The real world result of that, I would fear, would just elevate the most wealthy and extreme voices who don't care if 50% goes to nothing. Because the people who are spending $20 million in Jefferson County in a House race don't care if they have to spend 40 to get their 20.
Right.
That makes sense.
Because they're billionaires. And what it actually means is the people who can contribute 100 or 1,000 or
that makes sense.
200, half of that money goes away. And so the people that I advocate most strongly for are the people that don't have money to have a high dollar, lobbying presence in the Capitol.
Right. But basically, if it done reasonably, it would take everybody down by 50%. As you said, there's some people who don't care. They'll just double what they're doing. I sort of feel like that's okay because we can use more of their money. But
she's ready to make money.
But the nice thing about it is I don't ever have to worry about it passing because it wouldn't even get close.
Why don't you just much as levy an income tax on anyone who makes more than $1 million a year in this state.
I'm sort of okay with that, except you said the word income tax, and it's Texas.
Exactly.
You know,
So you worried about getting me in trouble talking about gay people? Like that doesn't get me in trouble. I just talk about taxing rich people.
Exactly. I mean, the word income tax and Texas do not go together.
Although without it, we pay more in overall tax.
Oh,
than
yeah.
the citizens of California. So Texas has surpassed California in what our citizens are taxed. So people can say, oh, I don't want to have an income tax here. It's like,
Look at the real money. Look at where it's going.
look at your
Total tax.
look at your property tax and your sales tax in this
Yep.
state.
And look at how much we're having to shoulder per hurricane season, per grid season, like every individual for their own selves having to get a generator of this, of this, of this, of this, of this. Like it's a
I
lot.
don't have a
I
generator.
feel like I need
It's a
one.
lot. It's a lot.
I haven't bought one, but
I'm trying to decide between generator or solar.
I don't have any options. I don't have any like financial options for either one of those things. So I mean, I hope it all goes well. And back to that hope thing, you know.
Yeah, hope is one of the words I don't like.
Yeah.
so hope is an incredibly powerful thing, but it doesn't help you with the weather.
Or anything else usually.
Well, John, we always have a seat here for you at this table, and we're glad to interview you once again and see you before you get back out there. Is there any way that we could offer other support? Is there any way that people can connect with you, to reach out, to get to keep up with you?
Sure. So you can find me on social media, and I have presence on the site formerly known as Twitter, Instagram, Facebook.
Good.
And if you just find Jon Rosenthal, it's usually
It'll
me.
pop up now.
So the actual at JON. So my name is John, JON, John, JON_Rosenthal TX.
Perfect.
And so you can find me that way. I respond to personal messages.
And if people want to donate to your campaign, same place?
They can go to Jon Rosenthal TX.
Okay.
And, or just if you find the presence on social media, usually those pages are linked there.
And would it cause you a problem if we happen to list your campaign information with our website sometimes?
It would not give me any heartache at all. I
Excellent.
would appreciate that very
Wonderful.
much.
Yeah. Well, we are always happy to share a cup of coffee and some chats. And we hope that everyone out there is taking care, because it is intense. It is intense. And if you'd like to subscribe or send us a message, go to 22sides.com. You can listen to us on any major platform, and we appreciate your suggestions, your thoughts, your comments, bridge building, and we look forward to hearing from you. So take care.